Imagine a quiet morning in the year 1859. You are a farmer in the state of Nebraska, standing on the edge of the great American frontier. The air is fresh, the soil is dark and rich, and you have just planted a field of a miraculous new crop, the potato. To you, this plant is a gift from heaven. It is easy to grow, it fills the belly, and it can survive almost anything. But as you look down at those green leaves, you have no idea that you are standing on a battlefield. You are about to witness the beginning of a war that will last for over 160 years. A war that will create a multi-billion-dollar global industry and change the way every single human on Earth eats their dinner, and your enemy. It is not an invading army. It is not a drought. It is a tiny, six-legged beetle with 10 black stripes on its back. This is the story of the Colorado Potato Beetle. It is the story of a biological accident, a train-stopping disaster, and the birth of the industrial pesticide. If you think your food is natural, think again. Everything you eat is a product of a chemical arms race that started with one very hungry bug. To understand the mystery of the beetle, we have to look at the world before the year 1492. In those days, the potato was a mountain plant, living high in the Andes of South America. The beetle, meanwhile, was a desert dweller living in Mexico in the American Southwest. They were separated by thousands of miles of ocean, jungle, and plains. They had never met. They were strangers in a divided world. In its original home, the beetle was a picky eater. It only fed on one specific plant, called the buffalo burr. This plant is a nasty, prickly weed. It is covered in long yellow thorns. It is the kind of plant that makes you go ouch just by looking at it. For millions of years, the beetle and the buffalo burr lived in a state of balance. The plant grew thorns, and the beetle developed the ability to eat them. It was a small, stable, and honestly quite boring relationship. But then, the world was stitched together. The Spaniards brought the potato to Europe. The Europeans brought the potato back to North America with the settlers. As the pioneers moved west across the United States, they carried their bags of seed potatoes with them. They were building a bridge of starch across the continent. Meanwhile, something else was moving. Cattle and horses were being driven across the plains. These animals had the prickly seeds of the buffalo burr stuck in their fur and their tails. As the animals moved north and east, they dropped the seeds of the beetle's favorite food along the trail. The beetle followed the food. It hitchhiked its way toward the Midwest. Then came the year 1859. Somewhere in eastern Nebraska or western Iowa, the beetle reached the edge of a potato field. This was the moment of the great taste test. The beetle crawled onto a potato leaf. It took a bite. In the brain of that beetle, it must have been like discovering a 5-star French restaurant after a lifetime of eating cardboard. The potato leaf is lush. It is soft. It is full of moisture and sugar. And most importantly, it does not have thorns. The potato belongs to the same plant family as the buffalo burr, so the beetle's body already knew how to process the toxins. But the potato was defenseless. Within a few years, the beetle did something terrifying. It evolved. Not in a slow, million-year way, but in a fast, explosive way. It switched its diet completely. It became the Colorado Potato Beetle, even though it was originally from Mexico. And because it now had an endless supply of high-calorie food, its population went vertical. By 1874, the beetle had become a biblical plague. It was moving east at a rate of 85 miles per year. Farmers woke up to find their fields stripped bare overnight, not a leaf left. Just thousands of yellow and black bugs crawling over the skeletal stalks. People were panicking. They called it the potato bug. It was the most famous insect in America. And then things got weird, really weird. In the summer of 1874, the beetle swarms reached the Atlantic coast. There were so many of them that they started falling into the ocean. The waves washed millions of dead beetles back onto the shore. In some places, the piles of rotting bugs were 3 feet high. The smell was so bad that people could not leave their houses. But the most famous incident happened on the railroads. You have to remember that the late 19th century was the age of the steam engine. These massive iron horses were the pride of the industrial world. But they had an Achilles heel, grease. When the beetle swarms migrated across the plains, they covered everything. They covered the houses, they covered the cows, and they covered the train tracks. When a train came along, it crushed billions of beetles under its heavy wheels. Each beetle is full of fatty, oily fluids. By the time a train had traveled a few hundred yards, the tracks were coated in a thick, slick layer of bug juice. The wheels of the locomotive lost all friction. They would spin and spin, but the train would go nowhere. Engineers had to get out of the train with shovels to scrape the orange mush off the tracks just to get moving again. The most powerful technology on Earth had been defeated by a leaf eater with an attitude. The farmers were desperate. They tried everything to stop the invasion. They tried hand-picking the bugs. They sent their children into the fields with jars to collect the beetles. This was a hopeless task. For every 1,000 beetles you picked, 1,000,000 more arrived the next morning. They tried building giant vacuum machines pulled by horses to suck the bugs off the plants. The machines just got clogged with mud and smashed the potatoes. They tried fire. They tried steam. Nothing worked. The beetle was winning. It seemed like the American potato was going to go extinct. But then, a legend says a man made a mistake, or perhaps it was an act of pure, mad genius. The story goes that a farmer in the Midwest had a fence that needed painting. At the time, one of the most popular colors for outdoor paint was a vibrant, bright green called Paris green. This paint was beautiful, but it was incredibly toxic. It was made from copper acetate. Yes, you heard that correctly. The secret ingredient was arsenic. Whether it was an accidental spill or a desperate experiment, someone realized that if you put Paris green paint on a potato plant, the beetles would take one bite and drop dead. This was a revelation. It was the first time in history that a synthetic chemical was used on a massive scale to kill a pest. Suddenly, everyone wanted Paris green. Hardware stores that used to sell paint transformed into chemical pharmacies. Farmers began mixing the poisonous green powder with flour or water and spraying it over their fields. It worked. The beetles died by the billions. The potato crop was saved, but the farmers had inadvertently opened a door that could never be closed. Before 1867, if a bug ate your crop, you prayed to God or you used a broom. After 1867, you reached for the poison. This was the birth of the modern pesticide industry. Companies that made dyes and chemicals suddenly saw a gold mine in the farmer's misery. They began to mass-produce arsenical compounds, like London purple and lead arsenate. These were incredibly dangerous substances. Farmers were spraying their food with lead and arsenic. They didn't have masks. They didn't have gloves. They just wanted the bugs to die. And the bugs... Well, the bugs had another surprise for us. This is where the story takes a dark, suspenseful turn. You see, the coal or addo potato beetle is a master of adaptation. In any population of millions of beetles, there will always be a few weirdos. A few beetles that have a tiny genetic mutation that makes them slightly resistant to the poison. When you spray a field with arsenic, 99% of the beetles die. But that 1% of resistant weirdo survives. They have the whole field to themselves. They eat, they mate, and they pass on their poison-resistant genes to their children. Within a few generations, you have an entire population of beetles that thinks arsenic is a seasoning. By the early 1900s, the beetles were laughing at Paris green, so the scientists came up with something stronger. Lead arsenate. The beetles laughed at that too. Then came the 1940s and the development of DDT. This was the ultimate weapon. It was the atomic bomb of the insect world. When farmers first used DDT on the potato beetle, the results were miraculous. The bugs didn't just die. They vanished. People thought the problem was solved forever. But the beetle was ready. In 7 short years, the coal or addo potato beetle had evolved resistance to DDT. 7 years. It was the fastest recorded case of pesticide resistance in history. The chemical companies had to go back to the lab. They made organophosphates. The beetles adapted. They made carbamates. The beetles adapted. They made pyrethroids. The beetles adapted. Today, the coal or addo potato beetle is resistant to over 50 different types of pesticides. It has evolved the ability to break down almost every toxin we have ever thrown at it. It has more genes for detoxification than almost any other insect on the planet. It is a biological survival machine. And this is the trap we are caught in. This is the chemical treadmill. Because we have built a global food system that relies on giant fields of a single crop, the potato, we have created a giant buffet for the beetle. And because we use chemicals to protect that buffet, we are constantly selecting for the toughest, smartest, and most toxic-resistant bugs. To keep eating potatoes, we have to keep inventing new poisons. We are running as fast as we can just to stay in the same place. Think about the scale of this. Every time you buy a bag of potatoes at the grocery store, you are participating in this cycle. The reason those potatoes are so cheap and so perfect looking is because a team of scientists and chemical plants are working 24 hours a day to stay one step ahead of a beetle from Mexico. We have turned our agriculture into an industrial war zone. And it all started because of the homogenocene. It started because we moved the potato to the beetle and the beetle to the potato. We collapsed the distance between them and created a biological Big Bang. We tried to tame nature with a paintbrush full of arsenic, and in the process, we became dependent on a system of toxicity that defines the modern world. There is a bit of dark humor in it, isn't there? We think we are the masters of the world. We think our technology can solve any problem. We build steam engines that span continents and satellites that circle the globe. But we are still held hostage by a bug the size of a fingernail. A bug that changed its mind about what was for dinner 160 years ago. The Colorado Potato Beetle is a reminder that evolution is the smartest player at the table. It doesn't matter how big our factories are or how smart our chemists are. The beetle has billions of years of practice at surviving. It doesn't have a plan. It just has a very efficient way of dying and being replaced by something better. The pesticide industry is now a billion-dollar behemoth. It produces hundreds of thousands of tons of chemicals every year. These chemicals end up in our soil, our water, and our bodies. We are still spraying. We are still running on the treadmill. And the beetle? The beetle is still there, striped and shiny, sitting on a potato leaf and waiting for the next challenge. So, next time you are at a fast food restaurant and you are eating a pile of French fries, take a second to look at them. Think about the yellow and orange grease on the tracks of the Iowa Railroad. Think about the bright green paint in the arsenic vats. Think about the invisible chemical war that allows that potato to exist. We live in a world shaped by 1,000 tiny encounters like this one. A world where a weed eater from the desert can start an industrial revolution. We are living in the age of the homogenocene, where everything is connected and everything is complicated. Is there a way out? Some farmers are trying to go back to the old ways. They are using crop rotation. They are using biological controls, like ladybugs and predatory wasps. They are trying to step off the treadmill. But it is hard. The beetle is fast, and the hunger of 7 billion humans is constant. The little beetle is a big lesson. It tells us that our impact on the world is never as simple as we think. We didn't just discover the new world. We created a new biological reality. We didn't just find a new crop. We sparked an evolutionary wildfire. Stay curious, stay informed, and always remember to wash your vegetables. Because you are not just eating food, you are eating the latest installment of a 160-year-old thriller. A story of a bug that refused to stay in its place, and a man who tried to poison his way to a better future. The beetle is still out there. It is watching. It is hungry. And it is ready for the next move. History is not just in the past. It is crawling through the dirt right now with 10 black stripes on its back, and the next chapter. That is being written in a laboratory or a potato field tonight. Until next time, keep your eyes open for the small things. Sometimes, the tiny creatures are the ones driving the big machines. The world is much stranger than you think, and much more connected than you know. See you in the next mystery. Stay safe, and whatever you do, keep a close watch on your potatoes. You never know who might be coming for dinner. Good night.